Rivalry week, baby. Rivalry
buddy.
week is here, Dan Rubenstein.
I'm not even going to give it a nickname like I do for most Saturdays because there's no topping Rivalry week. It's basic, it's simple, it's to the point, and it's lethal in its messaging. So come on, Ty, it's Rivalry week.
I am Ty Hildenbrand. He is Dan Rubenstein, not in his normal abode, we should add. Where are you, by the way?
I'm in Southern California, excuse me. I'm in the San Fernando Valley, just north of LA, in my middle brother's childhood bedroom, speaking into a work iPad that belongs to my wife. Don't tell anybody. And using the alt microphone. Hopefully it's a passable technical performance. I promise nothing from a creative or informational standpoint.
Well, welcome in. One and all, I am Ty, he is Dan. This is part one of what will be a two-part Rivalry Week extravaganza. We are going to talk through a couple of the matchups today, the three biggies, at least from our vantage point. On Friday, of course, there are many exciting games on Friday. We'll give you a bit of a rundown as to what is ahead. We've got, as I said, three big previews. We're also going to go through some of the latest coaching carousel news. We're going to give you the results of that Verballer Top 12 poll so that you can be ready in advance for whatever the new set of polling looks like when the college football playoff releases theirs on Tuesday evening. It is a pleasure to be back with you, Dan. Even though you are on the other side of the good old US of A, this is like returning to our roots. We do it a couple times a year where you're out there. I am still over here. And it's easy to forget this is how we started this whole thing. You were in LA, I was in Allentown, and we just sort of found a way to make it work.
I regret everything, Ty. When I see the number that gets me 11 megabits per second upload, I should be back home, Ty, and I have a good amount of anxiety as we do this. But
alas,
probably not as much anxiety as a lot of these teams and coaches and players heading into a huge weekend.
Why don't we dive in, Dan?
The coaching
Carousel.
The roar is because we've got more coaching news. It is the reason for the season. The latest one is that Justin Wilcox has officially been relieved of command at Cal. You can add another one to the list. They fired him with one game remaining in his 9th season, if you can believe that. Out at Cal, some of the early names that have popped up alongside this opening: Tosh Lupoy, currently the defensive coordinator at Oregon; Ryan Grubb, currently the offensive coordinator at Alabama. We got Sean Lewis, who right now is the head coach out at San Diego State; Jason Eck, I know you're a big Eck head, currently the head coach at New Mexico; and also Tim Plow, the UC Davis current head coach. Just 5 names that I saw out there. Have not seen any others, but this is relatively fresh news, Dan. I don't know if it comes as a great surprise. This has been rumored on and off now for the last couple years running. I guess the only bit of surprise to this is the fact that Cal is throwing their name, their hat in the ring of an already very crowded market with respect to job openings. So you're a California guy. You're out there in California at present. Is this what the locals are talking about, buzzing about town?
Yeah, you can't go anywhere without people talking about the Cal Golden Bears here in LA. This is a very difficult job. This is a crazy difficult job, given that now you're not only recruiting to Cal, which is a terrific school, and the setting is great, and when Cal football is good, it's a really fun home field advantage, but also Cal is in the ACC now. And so what you're saying is, come to this terrific academic place, and it's a beautiful campus, whatever, you're going to be playing in North Carolina more than you think. You're going to be playing in Florida. You're going to be playing in Boston. You're going to be playing, or I guess outside of Boston, you're going to be playing in Pittsburgh. So the sell that whoever the next guy is going to be pretty difficult. And so I imagine all of these names that you're mentioning, you know, I've heard Tosh Lupoy pretty quickly, who is an alum and an assistant at Cal and is known to be a great recruiter. You're going to need certain guarantees from an NIL and enthusiasm from a collective standpoint and from an administrative standpoint that Cal is not only going to be competitive, but probably needing to pay a premium. And now we've seen them, in the portal have some success. Obviously, they have a quarterback of the future right now from Hawaii, and what his future looks like, we'll see. But everything he said indicates, at least when Justin Wilcox was there, that he sees himself in Berkeley and there's a bright future for him and the Bears. We'll see. Right. So I think it's an extremely tough job because of where this team will be playing and because of, if you're a top West Coast kid, or even if you're an underrated West Coast kid, it's hard to, one, keep the powers at bay, the Arizona schools, the LA schools, obviously Oregon, Washington, and you're going to have to lean on maybe having a legacy, really leaning on the East Bay perhaps. It's harder than ever to look at Berkeley as a big-time destination for even top kids in the area, given their options. So I'm not saying it's impossible because, again, great school, high potential there, but there's a reason why not a ton of people have succeeded there, and that was like Pac-10, Pac-12, and Justin Wilcox seemed to figure out offense one year, figure out defense the next year. And so I guess the sidebar element of this is there's a terrific defensive mind out there on the market as well in Justin Wilcox.
Well, that's just it. And more to the point here with this job, Justin Wilcox has been a defensive-minded head coach for as long as he's been in the game. And so part of me wonders, do they look for a guy with a little bit more of an offensive pedigree? Some of the other names here, obviously Ryan Grubb, a current offensive coordinator, but Sean Lewis was an OC at Colorado for a moment, has definitely had a track record for being good on that side of the ball. Jason Eck, I believe, also would fit.
Only there for a year. Yeah.
So, and Tim Plow, I remember him as well. So these are other guys that I think maybe could give them the other perspective. We often see schools flip-flop from one coaching philosophy to another, defense to offense, defense to offense. We'll see if Cal decides to go in a similar direction. But of note here, they are now in the game as well, adding to the list after we filled the opening at Virginia Tech. You can put a new one up on the board in Cal. The other big news here on the coaching carousel front is a job that will not be open, at least not this year. Mike Norvell. It was announced relatively early on Sunday that Norvell was going to be retained at Florida State. He will be the head football coach in 2026. This is on the heels of a loss 21-11 against NC State, where they did not look good. And I think you and I talked about this on the recap episode, and I went so far as to say, I don't know how he comes back from this. But the truth of the matter is this for Florida State, and I think they were wise to at least understand the circumstances around them. His buyout is $58 million. That's a lot of potatoes, okay? It's a lot of potatoes. He's currently under contract through 2031. You may recall he signed that extension when his name was in the running potentially to take over at Alabama for Nick Saban. So this would have been a very, very costly venture for Florida State, A, to get rid of Norvell, and then B, to throw their hat in an already crowded ring of coaching vacancies, right? Not only are you contending with schools like Penn State up north, you're contending with Florida, in-state, right there alongside you, LSU, potentially Ole Miss, if Lane Kiffin decides to go to LSU or somewhere else, right? It's just a very, very crowded market right now. And I think if you're a school like a Florida State, you're looking at this and you're saying, we don't want to be the fourth best job or whatever it would end up being. We don't want to be that far down on the totem pole. We want to make sure that if and when it comes time, this is a job that people are circling, that they're lining up to talk about. So I get the logic behind it. They have very much tried to build this thing the last 2 years out of transfers, and they have just not had as much success as they did back in 2023 when it was a big deal and it all kind of worked, right? They have leaned very heavily on what they can do in the transfer portal, and the recent results on that front have not been there. So Lord knows what the philosophy looks like now moving forward. Are they going to stick with that plan? Are they going to try to do more of a balance? It's not like the high school recruiting has been popping off or anything. So there are some real questions that I think need to be asked about the philosophy behind the Florida State program, even separate from who is running the team. If that all makes sense.
It does. Yeah, there's calculus on a number of different levels here. Obviously, you're speaking to what the market looks like in terms of coaches and where Florida State might be in terms of interest in that community. And I'm sure Florida State had those conversations with agents and back channeling and figuring out where they might stand with certain names that they may or may not be interested in, and made the decision to bring Norvell back for, foregoing the price tag of his buyout and, putting money into the roster, perhaps in different ways. Look, it's not just that they relied on the portal. It's that some coordinator and assistant promotions definitely haven't worked out. Florida State has improved on both sides of the ball in certain areas. It's, very obvious. You look at game one, they just haven't closed out games, right? That it hasn't always worked out for the defense. You look at a game like the Pitt game, for example, when a freshman quarterback comes in and Florida State gets to 30, 31 points, and it's just not enough because they couldn't stop Mason Heinschel. They couldn't adjust. They couldn't do what was needed to get that Pitt offense off the field. And then at times it looked like the offense was in a much better place. I mean, how could it be worse from where it was in 2024? But it was obvious that they improved. But putting everything together, there was a cohesion that just didn't exist week to week with Florida State. And whether it was Mike Norvell's decisions to bring on or stop working with certain coaches, his decisions on the staff as a culture builder, as a program builder, as a roster builder, just have not paid off in any sort of meaningful way after he was in demand for that Alabama job, after they were on the precipice of making the 4-team playoff. Remember, it was a 4-team playoff that they were left out of.
That's right.
And so you're saying to yourself now that, okay, we're going to make changes once again with the roster, with coaches, and now we're going to say, yes, we understand that things are looking pretty bleak in Tallahassee with the future of this program under Mike Norvell, but come be a new offensive defensive coordinator potentially, come be the new quarterback, come play defensive tackle. It's a tough sell now. So as much as I understand putting that money into Florida State, you're now asking potentially new players, new coaches to believe in Florida State as a non-lame duck program, which is a big ask.
No.
And so you might be paying a premium. You might be trying to take chances with, much smaller school guys looking for a huge break and hope it works out. That I still feel like this is very much Mike Norvell tiptoeing across dental floss to maintain order in Tallahassee. So it doesn't seem like things are still going to be set up for success. But I also understand. What did you say was $58 million?
So thereabouts, yeah. It's, as I said, a lot of potatoes one way or another.
So there's probably also a situation in which the money behind the scenes may not be there or is reticent to trust whoever's hiring the new guy if they keep empowering Mike Norvell. So Florida State's just sort of sitting in it for the time being.
I think that's true. And I mean, the question of how they're going to construct this roster now moving forward is immediately where my mind went first. Because we, among many others, had very serious doubts about hitching the whole wagon to Tommy Castellanos and Gus Malzahn. So there will be guys out there. Maybe JKS will be out there. I'm sure there'll be plenty of quarterback names who are looking to move, bring down Kenny Minchie. I mean, you got options if you're a school like a Florida State that's got a very rich tradition of college football. I just think they need to change the philosophy and, find a better, and this is obvious, but they need to find a better mix of players and coaches that can work together and it doesn't feel as lopsided.
Yeah, but if the philosophy is Mike Norvell is the head coach.
I know.
This is probably what you're getting.
I get it.
The playoff precipice year seems more and more like an aberration than a target to get back to. It just doesn't seem like a good match. It seems like we know where this is heading. And Florida State, again, it's the calculus of do we pay $58 million now? Do we pay less later? And if you don't feel like you can get that coach, if you don't think that obvious guy to come in and strip it to the bolts and get it, or say strip it to the studs, that's what I'm looking for
or
here.
The bolts. There are bolts and studs. Yeah,
that's true. To strip this program down and rebuild it in an efficient, meaningful way, then I just think like at best we're heading to another year, another 2 years, whatever it's going to be, of bowl-ish Florida State losing winnable games, an inability to convince top-tier quarterback recruits and transfers to come to Tallahassee, top-tier coaches to come to Tallahassee, whatever, and we're kicking the can down the road, and to expect anything dramatically different is just seeming more and more foolish right now. So, but I get it. It's not my money. So, this is a real conundrum.
I get it. And look, if you're surveying the landscape for 2026, there are a number of coaches that are already on the hot seat going into next year. Baylor announced they're going to retain Dave Aranda. He's certainly a name who's been on and off of the hot seat the last couple of years. Luke Fickell retained at Wisconsin. He might be the hottest seat in all of college football. We're going to have Mike Locksley coming back at Maryland. They've decided they want to reinvest a little bit of their money into the roster construction element and not pay it in terms of a buyout. I get the logic. And now Florida State, and I'm sure there will be others that we are watching. There will also be other jobs that open. I'm certain of that. But at least for the time being, we are at least seeing some logic be applied to how schools want to play the current coaching market. And it's crowded out there. So we'll see what Norvell can do. He's getting a stay of execution here. The last two portal cycles have not been very kind to him, and clearly this is not the type of leap. Even if Florida State would get back to a bowl game, this is not the type of leap they were hoping for.
No.
But he's going to get another bite at the apple, so we'll see. See where this goes.
Yeah. And look, this is still the ACC, but the sort of average ACC team is pretty good, right? That like there are, even though you can look at this, and we saw a lot of this with Virginia Tech and hiring James Franklin, that the ACC is gettable or whatever, you're still talking about a conference with an improved Virginia, a Pitt team that's dangerous, a Georgia Tech team that's dangerous, obviously a Miami team that's dangerous. Clemson's obviously down, so I think that's why people are looking at this conference as gettable. But the number of teams that can either score 40 or keep a team down, SMU was in the championship game last season, like there is a pretty high floor in this conference. So just to immediately look at this conference as like gettable, if you're a Florida State fan, if you're a whoever fan, I think it's still a little bit misguided. There's just not that clear elite power. Miami's the closest as it gets, and they just lost to Louisville. I didn't even mention Louisville and SMU. So I still think it's a tough job, and you're recruiting against Florida and Miami and State and basically everybody else who's recruiting the state of Florida at the same time. But I just don't think it's as like turnkey, like a good Florida State immediately wins this conference. Like it's been a minute.
Yeah. Well, and the coaching talent has, I think, gotten better in the ACC as well. I mean, not just because of James Franklin, but look at what Jake Dickert has done right away at Wake Forest. I mean, say whatever you want about Bill Belichick. It hasn't been there this year for sure. It has not been a good UNC team, but
Manny Diaz and Duke winning games. Yeah.
Perhaps there will be some growth between this year and next. We'll see. I just don't think, to your point, it's the same ACC, and people don't know where to put that. Clemson isn't as good as Clemson was over the last decade. They weren't as much a player this year, despite my preseason predictions. And so there's a great bit of uncertainty with who are the new real players, who are the top dogs.
Yeah, and by the way, this is all internal, right? That Florida State needs to decide how it's organizing things internally, what the vision for this program long-term is, how they're treating NIL and portal stuff. Because you just keep looking to the outside for answers, and the same thing keeps happening. It's a you problem.
Right.
At this point, yeah.
I agree. All right, let's take a look at the Verballer Top 12 poll, as well as the AP Top 25 poll. So we got some subtle differences. For those who have listened to this show for a while, you know I've been saying this, but the two polls have effectively merged. They've merged because we have more data. There are some small differences. Right now in the AP poll, 1 through 4 is exactly the same. Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and Georgia. It's been that way for a minute. But Oregon went up 1. Ole Miss went down 1. Texas Tech also went down 1. And then to round out your top 12, we had Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Alabama, BYU, and Vandy. In that order, all staying put. Miami did bump up 1 to number 13. Doesn't matter as much with respect to the playoffs right now because this is just the AP poll. If we do take a look, though, over at our Verballer top 12 poll, as I said, just some subtle differences. The top 4 is exactly the same. We've got Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and Georgia. As you go a little bit further down, though, Oregon, also the same at number 5. We've got Texas Tech at number 6 in ours. We've got Ole Miss at number 7 in ours, as voted by our Verballer community. The rest of the way, it's Oklahoma. It's Alabama, who is ahead of Notre Dame in our poll. We've got Notre Dame at 10. We've got BYU at 11. And then in place of Vandy, who is at number 12 in the AP poll, our Verballers have Miami at number 12. So very small differences. There wasn't a whole lot of movement that anybody should have expected as a result of what we saw in Week 13. The biggest game, I think, in terms of playoff ramifications was probably what went down with the Georgia Tech Pitt game, just because the ACC right now is kind of a hot mess in terms of who's going to win that, who's even going to get into the game, and we could talk through that over the course of the week. But how would you have voted? I don't know if you cast your ballot before I pulled the results here, full disclosure,
right.
But how would you have voted relative to what I sent you earlier here with how this Verballer top 12 ended up shaking out? Because I had some differences on mine.
Well, what were your discrepancies? You mentioned, a change at or near the top.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about some of this before. This isn't all that different. I have A&M still at 2 over Indiana.
Okay.
It is like picking your favorite child. Okay, they are very, very close in my book. I've been impressed with A&M down the stretch. I feel like I've seen real growth there. Not that Indiana hasn't shown growth in their own right, but
other than the first half against South Carolina.
Other than the first half, yes.
Yeah.
Other than the first half, I'm giving the nod to Texas A&M.
Okay.
I also had Georgia at 4. I also had Oregon up at number 5. I put Notre Dame at 6. And that's probably the biggest bone of contention with my ballot versus other people's ballot.
Also, so why Notre Dame at 6 instead of Ole Miss?
Also, I'm probably terribly biased with this, but I've at least been consistent in that I get that there are schedule arguments. I get that there are a whole multitude of ways that you could order your teams here. I have said from the very beginning, I'm going based on eye test. And Notre Dame's been very good at the eye test, even though they haven't played the stiffest of competition. They've been very good at that. Case in point, look at what happened this weekend against Syracuse, 70-7.
Yes.
So I just think Notre Dame has improved. As I try to compare them with some of the other teams on this board, I think they're better than Texas Tech. I think they could beat Ole Miss. I definitely think they would beat Oklahoma. I'm not so sure about Alabama, but I feel like Alabama's one-dimensional enough on offense that Notre Dame would be able to take them. And I feel really good about their chances if push came to shove against a school like BYU or against Miami if they would play again. I know Miami won the first game, but this is a different Notre Dame team now, as I have said time and again. So I understand people are going to hear this and they're going to say, well, of course you're putting Notre Dame that high. You're a Notre Dame fan. That is fair criticism. Okay? But if I am going one by one, who I think can beat whom, I feel like I would put Notre Dame right there with Oregon, 5 and 6.
Okay. I think the case for Notre Dame, and I don't care if Notre Dame is in this playoff or not. I know you're a longtime fan. I don't think the case for Notre Dame is all that complicated. I know teams from the SEC or ACC, you need that boogeyman in the Big Ten or out west, or somebody to say, here is our enemy. We need an enemy. We need to zero in on somebody and get them in the crosshairs and prove why they don't belong in this conversation whatsoever. I get it with Notre Dame why you'd be upset because of the games they lost early on. Those were the games against the 2 best teams on their schedule.
Sure.
I think we agree.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So they have the opportunity. They lost by a combined 4 points.
Yep.
And I'm willing to say we should count head to head Notre Dame, Miami. We should. But it was in August. It can't be like it happened last week. Like, you have to weigh these things differently as seasons change and schemes change and the roster usage changes. You have to do that in both good and bad ways. And so I just don't think a win in late August means the exact same as a win in early November. Notre Dame scheduled, I think pretty well. What they could control, which is basically all of this, other than, they get a rotation of ACC teams. It's 10 power conference, quote unquote, power conference teams. And then the two other teams, one of which was in the playoff last year and the other one is still in contention for the American. If I have all that correct, they did not book a neutral site game. They did not book an FCS opponent. Right. So the way that they've handled business, I believe their strength of record is in the top 10. So it's how you play against who you play. They have not won a single game by single digits. I just think you gotta look at the context of this, and that Notre Dame is playing on an extremely high level. They just throttled a Pitt team, who in turn throttled on offense a team that we had penciled in for playing for the ACC. I don't think transitive stuff is worth a ton, but stuff that's happened recently, I think it's worth a conversation. So the case for Notre Dame as a top 10, top 8, top 9, having them ahead of Alabama, it's okay with me. Like, these are teams, like, if you want to be upset about it, I would look inward first at what Miami could control, at what Alabama could control. Right. Like, Alabama needed a miracle to beat South Carolina. Notre Dame hasn't needed any miracles against average or below average teams, have they? Maybe I missed one.
No.
But
no.
I think you got to look at the full plate, not just like a matchup. And I don't think the case for Notre Dame is all that difficult.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I hate framing this as a Notre Dame versus Miami conversation. I know it's going to go there.
Yeah, of course.
But there are a bunch of other teams now, at least per the latest run of the college football playoff rankings, that are also standing in the way of Miami. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I understand where we're at. So if you're a Miami fan, right now, what you're rooting for is A, big win over Pitt, a ranked Pitt, which could give you a little bit of a boost. Yes. I think you're hoping that a school like BYU, obviously would help if they lost this week, but even if they didn't lose this week and they ended up losing a week from now against Texas Tech, should they play a rematch in the Big 12 championship game, you'd obviously like to get BYU out of there. If you're Miami, clearly you got to beat a ranked Pitt and hope you get a little bit of a boost there to maybe jump the likes of Utah, who's also in front of you. I do think there is possibility here for Miami to still work their way back into this thing. Obviously, Auburn beating Alabama in rivalry would be a pretty big deal. If Oklahoma loses to LSU, that'd be a pretty big deal. So there are options here if you're a Miami fan. The problem is something that you have said time and again. It's a parlay. It's a parlay. You need a couple things to happen, not just one.
Yeah.
So they still have a much better chance as an at-large than they do as a conference champion. They could definitely find their way into this thing, and we've seen crazy results on rivalry week. So it would not at all surprise me if we saw that again. But they need a parlay. They need to beat Pitt. They need a few teams in front of them to lose either this week or next, and hope that the strength of a win over the Pitt Panthers can carry them into the field. Right now, the way that this is setting up, you got to be inside the top 10. You got to be inside the top 10 because 2 of the 12 are going to come from outside the top 12. The winner of the ACC, whoever wins and gets the that one spot is the representative as a G6. So that's the lay of the land for the Miami Hurricanes. They're very much on the outside looking in. If stuff gets weird here in rivalry week and conference championship week, then maybe it's a different conversation. But in terms of what they can control, they've got a big one on Saturday against Pitt. They got to start by winning that one.
Yeah, the interesting thing, too, is I read our friend Bill Connolly at ESPN talking about this, that, a lot of people love chaos. The chaos might not come from, like, a ton of upsets rivalry weekend.
No,
a ton of upsets actually may clarify things in a much easier way for the committee. It's probably a mix of, like, a couple upsets and then everybody else taking care of business is what throws this into a true mess, because like we haven't even mentioned, like Michigan has an opportunity to win the Big Ten and swipe a playoff spot. Like there are a number of different scenarios in which this thing gets real weird, and a lot of it just comes from chalk, and that's what makes this weekend super interesting.
Well, and I'll talk through some of that. I have some of that jotted down here as we get into previews, because more to the point, chaos is fun, but I do think there is some more subtle chaos that could go down in Rivalry Week that could really change the way that we're looking at the postseason and a lot of what's to come here over the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. Can't wait.
Write in solidverbal@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on the ballots. Let us know your thoughts on my ballot, on Dan's comments. We welcome it all, even if you don't agree. Just kind of be nice. Don't be a dick.
Yeah.
And we'll accept it proudly. Leave a comment wherever you are out there, be it on YouTube or Spotify or any of the apps that allow you to do so. We'd love to hear from you. We do read all of that stuff, even if we don't respond, because we just like to keep our finger on the pulse. So we'd encourage you to keep on doing that. The only other bit of housekeeping here before we jump into 3 big previews.
Yes.
Run the Board. It is not the last week of Run the Board, our pick'em game, but it is arguably the biggest week. Rivalry Week is always kind of the biggest week for Run the Board. So we are going to do something that we have never done before in terms of prizing. Okay. This game is only available to people who sign up and pledge on Patreon as either a certified or a premium verballer. So we're going to do the normal thing that we've been doing. Once a month, we give away a big $500 gift card to something. We're going to do that again. Big gift in its own right? It's a big gift.
Yes.
In addition, though, Dan, we are going to give away something that we have never given away before.
Oh, man.
This
pony? Tell me it's a pony, Ty.
I would love to give away a pony. I don't know what the shipping would cost.
Right.
This is something within the Verballerhood that I would say is a little bit more tangible and perhaps a little bit more valuable. Also, it was your idea. Would you care to explain?
Yeah, we're offering a golden ticket. You get to tour Ty's house. It's sort of, you treat it like a B&B. No, we're offering a golden ticket, a Solid Verbal golden ticket to, if you are able to win this week of Run the Board, you get the, it's $500 Visa card?
Yep.
$500 ahead of the holidays. You could do a lot with that. And then you also get to just skip the line and get a seat, obtain a seat on the Solid Verbal board and help to make decisions for the Solid Verbal Verballerhood and Solid Verbal universe at large. And this is Zoom calls. This is, you have some thoughts about Ty. You can tell him to his digital face.
You can.
You get to wield power in a way that you wouldn't otherwise unless you were able to finish in the top 5 of Run the Board in the season-long competition. A golden ticket to appear on the Solid Verbal board. I believe we send plaques. I believe Ty will write you letters of recommendation for a new job.
We have
for
had
anything
that,
you need.
We had somebody once put it on a resume. That's God's honest truth.
So if somebody's not poking around to see what an appearance on the Solid Verbal board actually consists of, you can do that in earnest.
And by the way, Dan, I haven't even broached this subject with you yet, but we're all friends here. Let's just bring it up.
Okay.
People on the existing board, we've been promising this for a while. There will be an email in your inbox before the end of this week scheduling our season end board meeting.
In Aruba, right? Is that what you said?
You can go to Aruba if you want. I don't got the budget for Aruba right now. And we don't have the budget for Aruba for the entire board. But
yeah,
wherever you are, current board can be part of that conversation. I would be willing to entertain making the golden ticket part of that conversation as well.
Oh.
Just to establish a little bit of continuity when the board turns over at the end of the year.
Yeah, of course. Oh, that's interesting. Are there any sort of corrupt ideas that you might have that, like, you could sort of do like a no-show job offer or sort of a no-bid contract situation for a board member? I don't know what that entails exactly.
No,
but
me neither.
I'm willing to look the other way if you come up with any ideas for board corruption.
All right. Well, if we want to go full SEC with this thing, we can do it.
Yeah, of course.
You and I can talk about it maybe offline, but this is what the stakes are for Run the Board. Again, if you go to solidverbal.com, you can find a link to our Patreon. You can also go to verballers.com. You can just go to patreon.com/solidverbal. Whichever URL you prefer will get you over there. Sign up as a certified, as a premium verballer. I think they're going to activate the game a little bit later on today. It's 12 games against the point spread. We're going to talk through all of these games in some way, shape, or form, starting with the games on Saturday. So the games that we're going to preview today are all on Friday. We want to give you an extra day. You have Black Friday to get those picks in as well. Starting on Saturday, running all throughout the day, that's when the 12 games are that you're going to have to pick.
Yes, correct.
Dan Rubenstein, speaking of previews.
Dan, time, help. I need picks of the week.
We got 3 games, baby. We got 3 games.
Yes, sir.
Before we do previews on a week like this, an important disclaimer to the Verballerhood. I want you to remind the fine folks out there what we do on Rivalry Week.
Oh, you stretch your shoulder, you stretch your lats, you stretch your traps, you do some squats, maybe loosen the wrist up a little bit, and you got to throw those records out, Ty.
Throw them out the window. Get them out of here.
Activate those glutes, whatever needs to happen so that you are launching those records with heft and reckless abandon.
My problem with picking games on Rivalry Week is always that I'm a bit of a romantic. You know, and I think a lot of the people that listen to this show are probably in the same boat. We love college football for the pageantry, for the chaos sometimes when we get it. And Rivalry Week is sort of a collection of both things. You know, it's where they both meet and merge, and it makes this week as special as it can be. I don't know if we're going to see any upsets this week. I've got a bunch of scenarios jotted down here that I think could have a real impact on the playoffs, could have a real impact on just how we view teams moving forward, both through bowl season and into the offseason. I had a bunch of stuff written down here, not just for this part 1, but for what we're going to record and put out tomorrow as well. But I'm excited. I'm going to try not to be too much of a romantic, but it's just so hard when you've got games like these. It's so hard. Let's start high noon on ABC. It is Ole Miss -7 on the road against Mississippi State. Dan, they call this one the Egg Bowl. They play for the Golden Egg Trophy. Of note here, the main storyline surrounding this game is not the game. It is what's going to happen after the game. Okay, so if you have not been following the Lane Kiffin saga, which maybe we could have talked about in the very beginning, but I saved it until now. The athletic director at Ole Miss, Keith Carter, expects that there will be an announcement about Lane Kiffin's future with Ole Miss on Saturday, November the 29th. I wonder what that means. My sense is that he's gone. Otherwise, they just would have came out and said, hey, he's coming back. They don't need all the fanfare for that. But this is Lane Kiffin, so who the hell knows? He is currently, as you know, the top target for pretty much every opening, but namely both LSU and Florida.
Right.
Will he? Won't he? That's the first thing. The second is, I think what we're going to get after this game is some clarity, more to your point earlier, about how Ole Miss even fits into the playoff. Assuming they're a playoff team, they've got like an 81% chance of getting in. They can still technically get into the SEC title game. They would need to win this one. They would need for Texas to beat Texas A&M. They would need for Auburn to knock off Alabama. So if they hit that parlay, then we could be talking about Ole Miss in the SEC title game. Or they could just win the Egg Bowl. They could lock in a home game in the first round of the playoffs, which I think is the better option. But multiple ways now. Again, 81% chance for Ole Miss to get in here. On that point, though, one final statement, and then I'm going to kick it over to you.
Please.
I want to mention this again because I don't think I have been clear enough as I go through my little playoff chaos scenarios. Having a first round bye is a perk, yes? We would agree on that?
Yes.
That's a perk.
That's the intention, yeah.
The intention is it's a perk. I would also add that teams on bye in the first round of the college football playoff are currently on a 4-game losing streak. It didn't go well last year. I think the value in this tournament, maybe if you're a bettor, maybe if you're just a fan of a team, is on being the number 5 or the number 6 seed. And I want people to commit that to memory. If you're the number 5, if you're the number 6 seed, you get your bye a week early because you're not playing in a conference championship game in all likelihood. Especially if you're Ole Miss. B, you lock in the playoff game against a team outside of the top 12. And that's important here. You're likely playing the ACC champion that could be the 20th best team in the country, or you're playing somebody like Tulane, both of whom I think you'd feel pretty good about. And you get that game at home. And on top of it, if you win that game, you're likely getting the loser of the Big Ten championship or a school like a Texas Tech, in my estimation. Right? Indiana, if you're Ole Miss, you might like your chances against Indiana. I haven't had a chance to preview that one, but I still think it's better than playing Ohio State. You get a school like an Indiana, you might get a school like a Texas Tech who you also feel like you match up well against. I think that is a decidedly better draw than having to play Ohio State or Texas A&M the next round of this thing. I could also be wrong, but this is the way I've been looking at it now for a few weeks running, and it feels like with each passing week, that becomes a little bit more true.
Yeah, and we should say, by the way, I don't want to make this whole show about playoff and playoff possibilities and looking backwards, looking forwards. The way the top four is determined has changed. So last year's 0-4 record includes teams that were not ranked in the top four.
Boise State,
end of the season.
Right? Boise State, Arizona State. Yeah.
And so, yes, and it was Georgia winning the SEC, Oregon taking on Ohio State after Ohio State had one of the weirdest losses ever, and everybody knew Ohio State was one of the best teams in the country. So maybe last year was just a weird unicorn year, but I think I hear what you're saying, and I think just because of the timing of it all and the amount of time off, I still agree with you.
Yeah.
But it is a nothing sample size, just 1 year. But I'm still with you. And, you know, we also have, and we'll get to this momentarily, like we have a Georgia team who's already done with their SEC schedule. And so they don't really have any calculus in terms of like what they do this week affecting their chance or not getting a chance to play for the SEC championship game, which also kind of seems like a long shot, I think, for Georgia to play in the SEC championship game, weirdly enough, as they seem like one of the best teams in the country right now. So, yeah. The calculus is going to change immensely. I think the big thing is you just don't want that second loss. You don't want to be lumped in with a lot more teams in a decision-making process. If you're Georgia, if you're Ole Miss, whoever. I think that's where we are.
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of stakes, not to overlook Mississippi State, but if Mississippi State wins this game, they're going to a bowl.
It's huge.
Which would be a very big deal. Again, the over-under was 3.5. I've said it till I'm blue in the face here. But they're one of the better stories in college football this season because of the success that they've had. They've been dangerous. They have been fun to watch. They have been legitimately dangerous.
Absolutely.
So there are stakes on both sides of this one, Dan. Where do you come down on this matchup?
It's a weird one to preview because you don't know what is going on at Ole Miss, right? That even something could come out the morning of, something could leak, and then the Ole Miss team finds out that Lane Kiffin's going to take your pick of whatever school. I mean, there are job openings that we might not even know about at time of recording that Lane Kiffin knows about and might be interested in. So that's something too to consider. The game is on the road, right? It's Ole Miss in Starkville.
That's correct.
So it's going to be a huge wave of negative emotion surrounding Lane Kiffin and his future behind the Ole Miss sideline. This game is already a game that's fraught with a ton of emotion and vitriol. I like Ole Miss here. I don't know if I like the points. I feel like this is going to be, I mean, this game is always like, feels like a strange game. As soon as a team seems like the obvious better team, contender, team to win by 14, 24 points, whatever, then it's a 3-point game.
No.
There just seems to be that kind of weirdness, especially when that team, that favorite, is on the road. I'm going to take the points here. I think both of these teams will be able to run.
Yeah.
And in those types of scenarios, when you're able to control some of the game on the ground, you're controlling clock, you're keeping defenses on the field, and then fourth quarters become wild cards. And so in that situation, I think I like Ole Miss to win close, but I'm happy to take the points. And look, my credo of taking a good defense at home as a dog. Mississippi State does not have a good defense. They're just a lot more competent than they've been. So I'm going to take Mississippi State to cover this game, to pop some big plays against this Ole Miss defense, be it on the ground, be it through the air, whatever. I just think we have a back and forth game in front of us. I think the college football guys are going to say Egg Bowl and Lane Kiffin's job future is in doubt. We're not giving you a routine game. There's just zero chance. I believe in the higher powers of this sport, and I don't think there's any way we get like, oh, yep, Ole Miss won 28-14, and they just look like the better team. I just don't see that as anything that's going to be in the cards.
Yeah, normally I'd say Ole Miss is like 14 to 17 points better than Mississippi State.
Right.
But my hesitation is the distractions because of Lane, because of the fact that this is in Starkville. This is just the fourth, count them, 4 road games this season for Ole Miss. And each of the previous 3 were one-score affairs. And Mississippi State's been very good against the point spread. They're 73% against the point spread, something like that. So Vegas has had a hard time getting a fix on the Bulldogs this year. Based on the numbers that I've got in front of me, this is a question of whether Mississippi State can stop the run or stop Trinidad Chambliss from killing them using the run. I think this looks like a very big game for one of those two guys. Probably not both, but Trinidad Chambliss, Kawan Lacey, one of those two guys is going to eat in this game. And that's why I like Ole Miss to win and cover this point spread. Because to your point, rivalry game on the road, I like having that good matchup on the ground. That can dictate the tempo. I think that's a big advantage for Ole Miss here. If they do need to pass, they're also very good at passing too. Let's be real about that. Trinidad Chambliss has been outstanding. There's a good matchup there as well. In that, Mississippi State likes to sit in a zone about 60% of the time. Ole Miss, as a passing offense, 4th best passing team nationally against zone coverage. So that tends to work to their advantage as well. I like to lean on the teams that have what I think is a definitive advantage on the ground in a rivalry spot because, hey, hostile setting, on the road, it's easy to make opposing quarterbacks see ghosts, right? I would much prefer having a school on my sheet here that is better on the ground and has a good matchup on the ground. So I'm very mixed on this one. I am not at all confident. I think Ole Miss wins. I think they barely cover. I've got it at 33-25. But I agree with everything you said. It probably will be weird. We will see a fair amount of weirdness here, especially because of the off-field stuff that will probably bleed over into this game to some extent. 33-25, I think Ole Miss gets the dub.
Now, here's the question. It's either a yes-no answer. Does something get leaked before the game kicks off?
Yes, 100%.
I say yes as well.
100%.
Yeah.
It's too big not to. It affects too many things. 100%.
Yep. All right. We agree on that, but not on the actual pick here.
3:30 ABC. It is Georgia minus 13 points, squaring off against Georgia Tech. They're playing this game in Atlanta, I believe, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So technically neutral site, but Georgia Tech obviously based in Atlanta. There will be a healthy supply of Georgia fans there, I am sure. Last year, Georgia won this game 44-42, excuse me, in a casual 8 overtime thriller.
You know how it goes.
Other than Michigan beating Ohio State, this was one of the big stories of Rivalry Week a year ago. 44-42. It was a hell of a game on a Friday night. I remember you and I were tweeting about it, talking about it. It was a lot of fun. This year, Georgia will get into the SEC title game if Texas beats Texas A&M, or if Auburn wins the Iron Bowl, or they could just win this game and not get in and grab the 4th or 5th seed, which I think works to their advantage. Meanwhile, if you're Georgia Tech, you need to win, and you need to hit an absolute ACC chaos parlay of Cal beating SMU, Pitt beating Miami, and Virginia Tech beating Virginia if you even want to sniff a conference championship.
Right.
They are not.
So that's what, 2 interim wins at Virginia Tech and Cal?
Yes.
Yeah.
You need a lot to break. The point of this game, though, is not the playoffs. The point of this game is not the rankings. The point of this game is clean old-fashioned hate. And I think this one is a big-time danger zone for Georgia right now. I think this is danger territory.
Okay.
Bear in mind, Tech could absolutely affect seeding by knocking off the Dogs. I mean, you want to beat your hated rival, always.
Always.
But if we're being realistic here, this is what they are playing for. They are playing to make life difficult for Georgia, more difficult for Georgia. And I say beware the team with nothing to lose. Always beware that team. I think Tech is going to empty the clip. Make sure they bring their extra batteries for Haynes King because he's going to be out there with reckless abandon. I think we are going to get 110% full maximum effort from Georgia Tech to try and pull an upset here. And that scares me because Georgia is probably in the playoff one way or another.
Right.
So I'm worried about this game, and the point spread to me is giving me some skeeves. Because, again, that feels like a lot of potatoes against a team that can score in Georgia Tech. What do you think?
I don't like how Georgia Tech's defense is played. You're going to talk about emptying the clip. You're going to talk about like throwing everything in the kitchen sink at Georgia. Of course they are. Of course they are. It's Georgia Tech, Georgia. They do that every year, and sometimes they just have nothing. There's nothing in the sink. And the thing I worry about here is Georgia gets to play against the Georgia Tech defense. And Georgia's really well coached. And this game is not going to be in a hostile place like it would have been if it were at Bobby Dodd. And I worry about this Georgia Tech team. Now, you can say this was a look-ahead spot last week against Pitt. But if you go down 28-0 to Pitt immediately, all due respect to Pitt, there's more going on than just looking ahead with your defense. There's more slop inside than perhaps we figured. And we saw it, against NC State a few weeks ago?
Yeah.
I'm real worried about Georgia Tech in this one. I'm real worried that maybe Georgia, and this was a different Georgia, especially offense last year for a couple different reasons, that Georgia is going to be taking this game not more seriously, but they'll have a little bit more of that laser focus like they would for a huge game because there are stakes in a way that there weren't necessarily last season. Because Georgia Tech last year was good, but I don't think Georgia went into this game with that kind of steely focus. I think the Georgia Tech defense is the worst thing in this game, and it's not particularly close. We'll see health-wise where Georgia is on their own defense with C.J. Allen. But even still, I think they've been playing well enough that this game is meaningful enough that, I mean, easier said than done. You got to stop Haynes King on the ground and through the air. But I'm just not there with Georgia Tech in this moment because their defense, by not playing well, is potentially going to leave their offense with no choice but to once again score that many points, but in regulation this year.
Okay.
And I just think that's a tall ask. What's the latest number?
13. Let me give you a counterpoint.
Please.
So on the Georgia side, Georgia has played 3 offenses inside the top 20 SP plus offensive metric. They gave up 41 on the road against Tennessee.
Long time ago, but yes.
Long time ago. They lost at home against Alabama. Yep. And they beat Ole Miss at home a couple weeks back, but they gave up like 35 points.
Right.
I like this.
And they held Bama scoreless. They held Bama scoreless in the second half of that game, right?
They did.
Yeah.
I like this Georgia defense. I do. But let's not pretend that they're the 85 Bears. This is not a brick wall. They are 95th in pressure rate. They are very mortal against the pass. And this still is a very good Georgia Tech offense. Say what you will about the defense, and I do not disagree. They've been a mess. But offensively, they're very good, and they can score.
That's true.
So when I'm looking at this point spread here, and when I'm talking about danger zone territory for Georgia, I'm not even so much saying it in terms of like, yeah, I think Georgia Tech can win. I don't know if they can win. Can they cover 13 points based on what we've seen from the Georgia defense against better offenses? I think that answer is yes. And I think this will be fun. I think they will pull out all the stops to try and keep this one close. I've got it at 41-31 Georgia. But I think Tech covers.
Okay. Yeah, my mind went to 37-28 and Tech covering, but even that might even be a backdoor situation.
Yeah.
I think Georgia's just going to be too good in too many phases. Like, if you have a pathetic defense at times, it's hard to feel good about you winning a game against a team of Georgia's caliber. And
Agreed.
I think Georgia's offense has gotten better over the course of this season. Like, this is a good Texas team. Or it's a good Texas front. It hasn't been a great Texas pass defense, obviously, this season. They've dealt with some injuries. And that game got out of hand. Yeah, I think Georgia Tech covers. I think they'll still be able to move the ball some, But again, Georgia's been playing the run so well.
They have.
That if you could make Georgia Tech one-dimensional and make Haynes King and this is not easy. This is easier said than done. Haynes King beat you through the air as a moat. Like, you're in a great place. So I think Georgia's going to take away bread and butter too often. But yeah, I think Georgia Tech will still be able to score some. But yeah, I think this is Georgia by 9-11.
I mean, what you're describing is not unlike what I described last week when Georgia Tech played Pitt.
Right.
And my whole thesis for that game is that Pitt's good enough to take away enough of the ground assault to make Georgia Tech a little bit more one-dimensional and to obviously score when they have the football. I think that was at least partially right. And I think Georgia can do a lot of the same stuff, but I think the stakes in this one are dramatically different than what we saw a week ago. Even though the ACC and the rights to get into the ACC title game were very much on the line, I think when you play a rival like this, a national power like this, a school that has been in the running nearly every year for the last decade in Georgia, Georgia Tech is very much still in this mode of trying to prove itself like it belongs on that stage. And we got a great game from them a year ago. They could have won that game in 8 overtimes. I think we're going to get another good effort from Brent Key. Any Brent Key squad plays hard, whistle to whistle.
That's true. There's going to be a lot of that Key sauce, Ty.
I can feel it coming. I think this is going to be a fun game. By the way, did we decide if we're doing the watch along for this game or for some other game on Friday? Are we still going to do that?
What time is the Texas A&M game?
That's a late game at 7:30.
7:30 Eastern.
Yeah.
I'm just doing bedtime calculations here.
Yeah, this one's at 3:30. The A&M game, which we're going to talk about next, is at 7:30 Eastern time.
Yeah, I think we should do one of these. Yeah.
All right, we'll figure that out. We'll figure that out.
We'll do one of these too. Yeah.
7:30 on ABC. Texas A&M, Texas Longhorns. Texas A&M favored by 2.5 points. They call this one the Lonestar Showdown. The rivalry is back now in Austin for the first time since 2010. Been a minute since they played this one at DKR. It is essentially win and in for Texas A&M. They're already a lock, I think, for the college football playoff. It is really a question at this point of, are they going to make the SEC title game? And furthermore, what is the seeding when they get to the playoff? They can also get in, even if they lose, if Bama and Ole Miss lose. So they've got multiple ways in. But the most obvious would be to just win this game, move on to Atlanta. I don't get this line at all. 2.5 in favor of Texas A&M on the road.
Right.
I saw that and I had to resist every impulse to make this my lock of the week because I know that's almost an instant jinx. But did you feel similarly when you saw 2.5 and only 2.5?
Yes, though it's really difficult to sort of gauge what Texas is or isn't. And that's Texas's fault, to be clear. They can score points against not so good defenses, and then they score a single offensive touchdown against the good defenses they play. And I think Texas A&M has a good defense, and you can get them on the ground. Texas isn't a team who gets teams on the ground, good teams especially. And so it's hard to get a read on why you should like Texas, especially since Texas's arguable best defensive player, Anthony Hill, is coming back from injury and missed, I think, last week, and he's been beat up for a couple weeks now. Arch Manning has not been particularly good against good defenses. Texas A&M has a good defense. They're well coached. Texas A&M gets better over the course of games. So the only reason not to like Texas A&M here, really, is the reason why Texas A&M has struggled at times this year, and those are passing game and first half mistakes from Marcel Reed. We saw it against LSU recently. We saw it against South Carolina recently. Those teams were not able to do anything in the second halves of those games as Marcel Reed improved and Colin Klein made adjustments for this offense, because I don't really worry about the defense too much. I think just that Mike Elko team is going to figure things out. They've done it both seasons he's been there. I like A&M here. And I like A&M in sort of a really like reticent way, because The game is in Austin. And when you have a big game, a big rivalry, emotional spot at home with a team that's capable of being good on both sides of the ball, they're like, the best of Arch Manning throws maybe the most beautiful or one of the 5 most beautiful deep balls in this sport. You got to be able to depend on something against a top 5 team. You're like, we're playing a top 5 team, and this is what we're rallying behind to beat them. This is the aspect of what we do well that we know we can depend on against anybody. Take your pick, I guess, on what that is for Texas, because they don't know either.
No, they don't.
And so I'm going A&M here to win by a touchdown. I think this could be a fun back and forth. I think we might see a couple of explosion plays from Texas, but drive to drive, what sustains the Texas offense, what sustains the back half of this beat up defense for Texas against A&M, I think it's a mystery to everybody. And so I'm going A&M here to win this game 27-20, something like that, 24-17, somewhat low scoring, maybe a quick start and then low scoring, but I have A&M by a touchdown on the road.
Yeah, I just think if you're picking Texas here, you're betting on a hero game from Arch Manning.
And you're betting on something new that hasn't happened.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to take a hero game from Arch if they're going to pull this upset. And the biggest issue I see is this is a Texas A&M defense that generates a ton of pressure up front.
Mm-hmm.
They are first in the nation in sacks per dropback. So we often see teams that get a lot of pressure but can't convert that into sacks. That is not the case with Texas A&M. They're one of the best havoc defenses. They get a lot of plays for loss. This is very much a playmaking defense, and that has been a problem for Texas, protecting Arch Manning. I read the stat off a week or two ago. I'm not even sure where it's at now, but the point stands. Arch Manning has been one of the most pressured quarterbacks in all of the Power 4. So, yes, some of it maybe Arch isn't as good as people hoped, but I think a lot of it is that he's constantly got guys in his face. And Texas A&M is going to try to force that issue. That is what this defense is all about. The numbers are very good against the pass. I think that is due in no small part to the fact that they're just very good at getting to the passer. So that, to me, is a real problem for the Longhorns in this game because it's something they've struggled with all season long, even though, to their credit, I feel like they have improved. Arch has improved. We have definitely seen some growth on the Texas side, but not enough in this capacity to make me feel good about this matchup here. 2.5 points. I did think about making this a lock. I still might come back and make it a lock when we do our part 2. Mm-hmm. I've got it at something like 31-20. Texas A&M. I think they win on the road. And I get, a lot of emotion, good defense at home. Right?
But is it a good defense?
Well, I don't know.
In this moment?
It's a better defense, but I think it's an open question as to how good that Texas defense is.
Yep.
So I'm on 31-20. I like A&M to win this one, to go undefeated into the college football playoff after the SEC championship. We'll see how they do in that game, but this is where I'm at.
Yeah, the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause, and I just don't know if Texas falls under this, is Texas A&M's schedule is one that, they've just played a lot of teams nowhere near the top of the SEC.
I know it. You're not wrong, man. I was looking at that too, and that was one of the things that caused me to pump the brakes a little bit on being too overly aggressive on Texas A&M.
And so Texas, not that they are this hugely successful team relative to expectations, relative to why don't they have something that they do excellently well every week. They're different. They're different than playing against Mizzou or South Carolina or, a weak LSU this season. They just are. And that's what gives me a little bit of pause that this game is in Austin. There is, Texas is motivated on 3 different levels here, right? That there's the Arch factor that all can be forgiven if he scores 35 points in a 14-point win for Texas against A&M at home, with some of his struggles this season, with some of Sark's frustrations, with some of the frustration with the offensive line and the running game, the pass defense, and overcoming injuries and depth concerns in the secondary, that Texas is just going to lay everything out there. They're not focused on anything else. They need help to get to the playoff, right? So
I mean, it's virtually impossible for Texas to get into the playoff.
Right. They need a crazy amount of help to get into any sort of large conversation.
Speaking of parlays, yeah.
Right. So Texas is this is the entire season from physical, emotional, spiritual place, and they're at home, and they have game changers. Now, the units aren't game-changing units, but like they've got speed on the outside. They've got talent on defense, obviously, especially in the front of that defense. They're healthier at safety than they were earlier in the season. Like there's a lot still going for Texas to do something that they haven't been able to do, which is put everything together against a really good team. But again, you're banking on the mysterious if that's what you feel. And I can't in this moment. So yeah, I'm going A&M here to cover.
We agree. All right, some other games here. We're not going to do a preview of these. We will preview some on tomorrow's episode. But just to give you the lay of the land, other games taking place this weekend on Rivalry Week. You probably know a bunch of these already. We got the Heroes game between Iowa and Nebraska early in the day on Friday. Also on Friday, we've got the Ram Falcon Trophy, one of my personal favorites, between Air Force and Colorado State. You got the Old Oaken Bucket between Indiana and Purdue. And, of course, later on, 9 p.m. on Fox, you've got Arizona on the road at Arizona State for the Territorial Cup in a game that should be fun as hell. I am really looking forward to the Territorial Cup.
And could have real Big 12 championship stakes.
It absolutely could. It absolutely could. We'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like tomorrow. But for sure, Arizona State kind of on the outside looking in at this point, but if we have the weird parlay situation in the Big 12, which it is the Big 12, you could never rule it out, ASU could be there potentially, but they need to win first against Arizona. Then as we move to Saturday, again, no shortage of big/interesting games. The game is probably where it starts and ends. High noon on Fox, number 1 Ohio State, on the road against Michigan right now at time of recording, an 11.5-point favorite. Again, Ohio State on a 4-game losing streak. We've got Miami against Pitt. Miami is on the road, about a touchdown favorite against the Pitt Panthers. We've got Kentucky and Louisville playing for the Governor's Cup. And we've got Clemson, South Carolina. South Carolina favored by about a field goal in the Palmetto Bowl. Those ones are all early. In the middle of the day, we got a whole bunch of other games, Dan. We've got the Battle on the Bayou, one of my other favorite rivalry names, between UL Monroe and Louisiana. We've got Oregon, Washington. I don't know if there's an official name for that. I saw Cascade Clash. I don't hear them throwing that one around a whole lot, but it's some kind of rivalry, and Oregon only favored by 6.5 points, which is interesting.
Yeah, usually earlier in the season, but it's come to Rivalry Week with the end of Oregon State as the year ender, and obviously a huge amount of emotion in this one and huge amount of stakes in this one as well.
Enormous, absolutely enormous. LSU on the road at Oklahoma. Oklahoma needs a win here to clinch a spot in the college football playoff. They're a 10-point favorite. We got Vandy and Tennessee. Tennessee favored by about a field goal. That one is a big deal. Mizzou on the road at Arkansas in the Battle Line rivalry. Always a fun matchup. And, of course, they're playing for Paul Bunyan's Axe. Paul Bunyan's Axe, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Wisconsin's come on last couple weeks, looking a little bit better. About a field goal underdog going on the road to Minneapolis. UCLA and USC, playing for the Victory Bell, and Florida State in the Sunshine Showdown. And then to close things out, a hodgepodge of other games. The Commonwealth Cup between Virginia Tech and Virginia. The Iron Bowl between Alabama and Auburn. The Land of Lincoln Trophy being played at 7:30 on Fox between Northwestern and Illinois. The battle for the Fremont Cannon, another one of my personal favorites, between UNLV and Nevada.
Nice.
And then in the late window, I can't believe they did this to me, but Notre Dame, a 33-point favorite on the road against Stanford. Fresno, a field goal favorite against San Jose State for the Valley Trophy. And Wyoming against Hawaii. Hawaii favored by 10.5 points. Is it the Peniolo Trophy? I believe that is how you say it. I am not entirely sure, but one of the lesser-known trophies in college football that I'll talk a little bit more about tomorrow.
Awesome. Look, if we just gave you Friday, this is my QVC pitch. If we just gave you Friday, you'd say to yourself, what a weekend of games.
Totally.
And what are we doing? We're throwing in Saturday for the same price. we're throwing in a ridiculous amount of college football. So my message to you, Ty, and message to everybody, you got to pace yourself.
Yeah.
Don't go hog wild with the leftovers on Friday as the games start. Have some, just don't go crazy, because maybe catch a workout Friday morning, maybe catch a workout Saturday morning, maybe catch a power nap because you're staying up late to watch the Solid Verbal at midnight Eastern time Saturday night, reviewing all of this ahead of the committee's announcement on Sunday. Well, I guess that would be the following week. Excuse me. But you got to pace yourself, because yes, we have the following week. Yes, we have conference championship week. And yes, there's going to be a late night show after that one. So this next week-ish is going to be enormous.
It's
so
a real test
do some
of your,
squats, do some crunches.
It's a test of your mettle as a fan, is what it is.
I agree.
What I would suggest is not illegal, but somewhat diabolical.
Greenies, is that what they call in baseball?
I'm not going there with this.
Okay.
But I'm not going there with this either.
Oh.
What I would suggest, because the day after Thanksgiving, look, I don't care. I don't care if you're hosting. I don't care if you're out going to a family member's house, whatever. It takes a little bit, at least for me, in my old age these days. Sort of wake up to boot up. A lot of times I'm eating stuff I don't normally eat. Not always feeling tip-top shape, right? So, pretty good chance on Friday you're going to be around to watch the early slate of games, and there are a bunch of good ones. But what I would suggest is maybe mid-afternoon-ish. Get to like the 4 o'clock window. That's when I want you to load up your significant other on as much turkey as humanly possible.
Settle. I see where you're going.
I want you to induce a good, a long, a very peaceful slumber.
What if they also like college football?
That will get, well, then I can't, then
Yeah.
Then you should be drinking like liquid IV or something to keep yourself awake. I don't know.
Correct.
Not a sponsor, could be. But
could be.
I want you, if you are in a situation where the other people in the household don't really want to watch college football all day for 2 days running, nice helping of turkey leftovers. Get that nap going.
Fix.
Middle of the day, middle of the afternoon, I guess. Get that nap going. By the time they wake up, the late games maybe will have already started or are about to start, and they won't feel like wanting to go and do anything. Because after you wake up from mid-afternoon nap, a lot of times you're
grog city.
Yeah, you're just not in the mood for that.
Agree.
I think that's the move to break up the day. If you find yourself in a situation where you don't know if you're going to be able to watch the games, but you want to. A little diabolical, but totally legal.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there.
And remember to stretch. Remember to hydrate. You don't want to pull a hammy jumping up and down on your couch, right? You're pacing nervously. You don't want to go down with a hammy. It'd be the worst possible moment. No. I think we all have this together.
100%. So look, those are our picks for Friday, and that's what you have to look forward to on Friday. As I've said a couple times now, we have got a part 2. Got to preview all the other games. It's going to drop tomorrow. We're like diverting a little bit from our normal Tuesday, Thursday release schedule because no one downloads anything on Thanksgiving. Right. So you will get an episode on Tuesday and Wednesday before the holidays start. And then, as you said, yes, we will have our midnight live stream recapping all that occurred in Rivalry Week. You can either tune into that one live on YouTube at midnight, or you can listen to the recap bright and early on Sunday morning.
Correct. A lot of options.
Dan Rubenstein, we're going to do this again tomorrow. The video, again, will look a little bit different, but hopefully the fine people got what they needed to go about into the college football world confidently and feel prepared for Friday.
Yes, sir.
For that guy all the way over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrand, thank you for downloading, for listening, for supporting. Check us out at Verballerhood.com. In the meantime, you know the drill. Stay solid.
Peace.